I end up
It can
I
happen.
look like this when I run in the heat all the time.
Yeah, exactly. That summer heat. Hi guys, welcome back, and I'm delighted to be joined by Jason Fitzgerald from Strength Running Podcast. Is the number one running podcast definitely been up there, top two, three?
Yeah, it spent most of May in the number three position, but it's usually top five. I think it right now it's ranking as number five.
And how long have you been doing it? Like years? Like,
Oh yeah, today. This year is actually my 10-year anniversary of the Strength Running Podcast. I started in 2016.
yeah, that is mental. And like I said, I was on your podcast last week, and I just cheekily asked Jason, it's like, could you jump on to our Q&A? It's like a lot less informal than the podcast, but we started talking about plyometrics. We won't go back into it because you can find that on the strength running podcast. But I thought it'd be 5 minutes, and Jason's just so inquisitive and so because he's a runner himself, he understands what you really want to know. And it's like we spent 60 minutes talking about that
I,
using the
I
skipping
have the
rope.
gift of gab, it seems.
Yeah, exactly, down to the Blarney Stone. Uh, yeah. So okay, so what I wanted to chat then, Jason, about was you have interviewed so many people. You have been around the running scene for so long. Obviously, as a collegiate runner yourself and a good, kind of elite, kind of varsity runner, and then having the like, top five podcast for probably last 10 years in running. Um, Straight in the deep end, then like, what are the like what are the biggest takeaways or biggest things that you've taken from them? Like, so obviously you're going to hear different controversial views and you want to share that with people. So some of it you're going to be like, oh, that sounds interesting, not for me. But what are the bits that when you heard you're like, oh my God, that's really good and that changes what I'm going to do or how I run or work out or structure what I do.
Yeah, there's certainly been I've had a lot of guests and training has, how we think about training, I think has changed a lot in the last not just 10 years, but really 20 years and beyond. I think the funny thing is if someone has like a training opinion or a piece of advice that is so different and out in left field compared to most of the guests that I have on the podcast, it's probably not great advice because I feel like one of
Yeah.
the things we've learned in 2026, at this point, I think we have a pretty good handle on how to train endurance runners. There's going to be different styles and there's going to be the opportunity to make, different choices in training, but the broad strokes of a training program, a training cycle, are all kind of the same, right? So, one of the things that we see is here's a little bit of an example. You have the world record holder in the marathon, and it was publicized that he was running like 100. Let's see, he was running 250 kilometers a week. It was
Yeah.
somewhere around 140, 150 miles per week. And then you have a now professional but former collegiate runner, Parker Valby, here in the United States, who doesn't actually run that much and does an enormous amount of cross training. And
Yes.
one might think that there's a huge difference between these two athletes. But in reality, they're both high volume athletes. So even
Yeah.
if there's dramatic differences in the training program, the underlining principle that kind of influences that decision is still pretty much the same. They're still a high volume endurance runner. They're just kind of going about it in different ways. And I think that's true almost kind of across the board, with regard to, we could talk about, endurance through volume. We could talk about strength and how I think a lot of coaches and athletes now are much more interested in strength. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be in the weight room doing heavy squats. I
Yes.
personally think that's probably a good idea for most runners, but you have a lot of coaches who are using other training interventions to get similar benefits. So if we zoom out to the level of like principles, I don't think a lot has really changed. Maybe one of the things that has changed a lot is that there's now just a lot more visibility into the training process. Because I remember
Massive.
when I was in college, uh, I went to college between 2002 and 2006. The internet was just like really kind of coming online from a consumer perspective. And we then just started seeing other runners put their training online. And that like you had never seen it before. It was really interesting to be like, oh, this guy at a competing school is running 110 miles a week. Why am I only running 60? And so you got that amazing comparison tool. And that I think has allowed more runners to realize what hard training really is. And, like I just saw a video, the world record for a middle school girl in the mile just fell. There was a seventh grade girl who ran a 4:38 mile.
Yeah,
And,
sick.
and it's just unbelievable. I don't even know how to process that. I mean, it's so
But
fast.
linked to that, I think also is um like yeah, as you said, with the advent of Strava and people showing everything, we were talking about that, me and my friends on a run, that definitely the volume, you start seeing what they're doing, but also the flip side of hard training, and I always was trying to tell people this, is you actually see what they're not doing. And on their easy running days, they're not running hard because we would have always heard these stories of like even like the Eamon Coughlin's and your really good runners here. Oh, they go out on their easy days. They're doing 6 minute, sub 6 minute miling for 10 miles. And then they're smashing a session the next day. And it's very easy to remember your best weeks when you're absolutely flying. And you're like, oh, I remember I went out and did that. But like what we're seeing, if you look on Strava, is like my friend loves to send it. He loves sending runs. And he's the one saying, he's like, I cannot believe how slow these world-class marathon runners are running easy days. He's like, he always would have run 6:10s down to 6 minutes, just get into it. And he's like, there's guys running low 2:10s for the marathon, maybe even sub 2:10. And they could be 7+ minute miling on an easy day. But then when they're on their long run and it's a long run workout, they're actually smashing it.
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the things that this speaks to is that, um, like we kind of think pro runners train like all the same way. Oh, you do your easy runs at 6 minute mile pace, and it's like, well, maybe one or two of them, but one or two of them might be 7:30 pace or 8 minute pace. And I think what we're learning is that a lot of the things that most adult recreational runners care about, like the pace of their easy runs, is not something that a pro runner cares about because that is just kind of that's a downstream effect of their fitness level. It's partially impacted by how much volume they're doing. I just interviewed a 211 marathoner who runs 145 miles per week, and he has to slow down his volume when he's running that kind of insane mileage.
Yeah.
And so it kind of goes to show, you know, if you're worrying about like the details and minutia of every little thing in your training, just know that a pro runner probably isn't worrying about that. They have a couple things that's their North Star, then everything else just kind of falls into place.
Yeah, exactly. Like obviously he's from Kilkenny, he's ran 2:06. Peter Lynch is the national record holder. I have to get him back on a podcast. He went to podcast. He's gone AWOL on me, but you would be surprised how relaxed that guy is on runs. But when it's time to run hard, they run very hard. But other than that, it's not like every day has to be. If we just end up with some guys who are a little bit slower, he has no issue with that at all. So, Sari, going back then to the principles that anyone can follow. Obviously, having volume in your training, like getting out, that is so important, by the way. Uh, for the normal runner, sorry, just to like, oh, if someone's listening in, like the normal runner, I think rather than having in your head of going, one mistake I always see them do is like they were doing like a 10K. I'm just thinking of one guy specifically here. He would run 10K as hard as he could, basically, on say a Tuesday, and then again he might go out for a 5K or 10K hard as he could again on a Friday or Saturday. And by slowing down Now when he gets home from work, he's not like dreading the run. And I was talking to James before you got on just about threshold and using your heart rate. And he's like, just going out for like more runs, getting more volume in. From him going from like 2 days a week to 5 days a week, even though the 5 days are way less intense because it's more specific to him, uh, in better structure. He absolutely, he was running like 23 minutes for 5K. He got it down to like 19 minutes. And it's just purely, as you said, more volume being one thing, making sure then having strength training in your to keep you strong, like be that body weight, be that heavier weights. Um, is there any other principles that you kind of see along the way of like this is just is the way to train, basically? The Mandalorian, this is the way.
This is the way. Yeah, I mean, I think volume is probably the most important. Exercise physiologist Steven Seiler calls it the number one training need for endurance runners. It's kind of the foundation that everything else rests upon. Now, if we go on the other end of the spectrum, I think one of the things that everyone is realizing now is that you have to be fast.
Yeah,
And what I mean by that is you have to know how to sprint or to run very close to a maximal effort relatively comfortably.
yeah,
Um, we could call this your sprinting ability. We could call it your top end speed. This is where you build a tremendous amount of running economy. It's where you push up on your fitness. It's really where you pull up on your fitness from above. When you do
yeah,
a lot of volume, you're sort of pushing it up from below, and the speed work pulls it up from the top. And I'm seeing 100-mile ultra marathoners really care about their mile time. And
yeah.
I didn't see that 10, 15 years ago. And there's a lot of ultra runners out there who are very public about their training, and I think that's helping. Kind of going back to just being transparent about training and letting everyone learn from it. But this is like so important that I don't care if you're base
Yeah.
training for 100-mile ultra or anything in between. You should probably be doing something like strides 2 or 3 times a week. We should be doing some kind of speed development, and really working on that ability to run fast. It helps with coordination. It helps with even injury prevention, because if you can
100%.
sprint comfortably and you have the ability to have that kind of range of motion to produce that kind of power output, which is not a small thing, I think, especially if you're, in your 40s and 50s or beyond. Like, these are skills that you just stop kind of flexing. And next thing you know, you're 55 years old and you haven't sprinted in a decade. Is really hard to get back to it. So I think one of the things, if you want to have a long running career and really focus on longevity, I think one of the best things you can do is just get comfortable running very fast, very frequently. And I do want to add, like, there's a huge difference between running fast and running hard. What I'm talking about is
Yes.
running fast. I'm not talking about VO2 max workouts on the track. I'm not talking about 800-meter repeats, 1,000-meter repeats. I'm talking about 8 seconds all the way up to maybe 200 meters of short, very fast reps, and getting comfortable with that kind of speed work.
And I just preface that with we talked about this last week at Jason that like also guys, because Laurie she's here, so I'm not just talking behind her back. Uh she'll attest to this. What we can do then sometimes is like, oh, speed work, going fast, going flat out. Do everything at like 90%. The consistency, the frequency is the key thing here, not the speed. Like the speed comes with time. Like the intention of trying to go faster, but like staying relaxed, as Jason said, maybe start at 5 seconds or 8 seconds. You'll naturally pick up speed because it is only 8 seconds. You're like, geez, this rep was really slow. Or do a slight incline, like a slight incline, so you can still run fast, you can still produce power, but you're slowing yourself down slightly. And the key thing here is just like if you were going into the gym, you wouldn't just go, the gym is a good idea. It is a good idea. It is good to lift heavy. You don't go in day one in the gym, put on as heavy a weight as you can and lift as much as you can. You gradually build into it. And then it's the exact same thing with our strides. We need to be doing these regularly. As Jason mentions there, it helps everybody from your ultra runners. It helps that movement mechanics, even like increasing the ranges of motion, activating muscles as we hit the ground. It just really helps, but just introduce it gradually as you come in. Yeah, that's a really good one. So you have volume.
And Owen,
Then,
can
yeah,
I
keep
just
going.
add too? I think what you said about kind of treating the speed work as like a 90% effort most of the time, I actually think that's a good thing for almost every aspect of your training. Like I'm a little
100%.
bit of a lazy runner and coach. Like, if you can't run 10 miles, run 9.5. If you can't run 9.5, run 9. And,
Yeah.
just kind of treat your training as fun and don't think of it as like, I've got to run 12 kilometers today at 6 minutes a kilometer. Well, if you run 11.8 at 6:08 per kilometer, your body doesn't really know the difference. And so there's
100%.
there's still flexibility within runs and workouts to make it just a little bit easier. And I think that really extends your longevity in the sport and it reduces the injury risk. So I'm a big fan of like just
And
kind
as
of taking it easy with training. Like,
and
sure,
as
like
well, the
some things are going to be
burnout, not
hard.
even injury, burnout. Like you can't be dreading training all the time. Like if you again talking about elites, like they train like a lot of times, guys. When I've ever stepped up my training to like training with the Australian team or Olympians, it shocks me how much I'm able to handle the training they're doing. It's the volume, as Jason said, it's relentless. It's just like, but the actual sessions, like Dave McCarthy has a really good, I heard it from him first anyway, was in reps. So say if I'm doing 10 reps, you should, on the 10th, you should feel like if I had to do two more, I should be able to do them. And also for pace management, to avoid going out too hard, if you're doing, say, a 400, double it. If you're doing a minute rep, imagine if you're going out for 2 minutes. That will help reduce that like big sprint at the start or gutting it out. It's like if you're going around it going, if I had a if I'm at the 200-meter mark and rather than finishing at 400, if I'm finishing at 800, so I had 600 left, how would I feel? Because you'll find out with the elite guys, it is only like max 6 and a lot of people 3 weeks before a race that they will start really dialing in. They'll have a couple of key sessions that they'll be, I need to hit these specific times. And everyone else is a little bit loosey goosey. Yeah, that's a really good point, Jason. And I do think it really helps that burnout. So yeah, then so had volume, strength training. You did like and any kind of major moves that you like in particular, or is it just the general ones? I know you have a lot of programs that you give.
Yeah, yeah. Like I do have a strength program. I think there's a lot of flexibility in strength training, although I am really glad to see runners embracing it. It was a little bit of a hard sell 10 or 15
Yeah,
years ago, but it now does seem like most runners have embraced the fact that, you need some kind of strength training in your program. Yes, it's going to help you get stronger, but when you kind of think about all the things that lifting weights in a gym does for you as a runner, and then when you also recognize like you don't need to be in the gym more than 2 days a week, it doesn't have to be more than 45 minutes to an hour. Even an hour might be on the longer end of things. You can really get a lot from a little.
yeah,
And that includes, yes, strength, but you're also going to be building a certain amount of like coordination and athleticism. A strength coach that I once talked to called it coordination training under resistance. So you're basically putting load on the body and then moving in these slightly complex movements, like, say, a deadlift, a squat, or some variation of one of those exercises. And you're recruiting muscle fibers in a way that you don't do it while you're running. And that has a lot of carryover benefit to your running. So at the end of a race, when you're trying to run really hard, really fast, you know how to recruit those muscle fibers. And that helps you sprint faster at the end of the race. Having a little bit more ability to recruit those fibers also improves your running economy. So it makes you more efficient overall.
100%.
And that might be
Also,
one of the biggest benefits of strength
Yeah.
training, besides like just kind of making you a little bit more sturdy and durable for the rigors of running, is that improvement in efficiency.
Yeah, exactly. Core, you're holding that more steady. That's going to help more efficient. Also, like you look better doing a bit of strength training. You'll feel better doing strength training. I did
There's
a
nothing wrong with a vanity goal, right?
100%. We all got to look in that mirror sometimes. But I actually so I've got a little bit of I was just a little bit sick like last week you would have heard of my voice a bit. And I'm meant to do a race tomorrow, so that's out. And I'm just having these like slight little hiccups. But I did a workout, very light workout on Friday. It was like 8 by 200 meters. As to your point, because I'm like a little bit sick, I was like just really enjoyable. It's like take a little bit longer recovery. And I kind of knew like I'm still on the fence. Maybe I'll go up tomorrow, but I don't think so now. But I was jogging home and I was just thinking to myself, that was actually really good fun. Like I just enjoyed that. And like none of us are good enough. Okay, yes, we want to run PBs or PRs, but the training to attain the goal shouldn't be like it should be enjoyable in some sense. And I think if you add in a little bit of strength training, if you have a nice structure, even if you don't hit the goal, you don't want to look back, even if it's a marathon that you're training for. You don't want to look back and go, I've hated the last 16 weeks of my life because of this. And then, but I hit this goal because you want to go like, if I hit the goal, brilliant, I'm being buzzing. But if I didn't, it's like, I got a lot of skills out of this. I'm a lot fitter. And if you add in strength training, one, it's going to help with that goal. It's going to help with injury prevention. But two, it's going to be like, well, I'm actually feeling stronger in myself. I'm actually looking better. I actually feel like the last 4 months, I'm actually in a really good place. I'm doing strides. I feel faster than I have. And then like it takes pressure off the goal because say when I was jogging home from that workout, I'm like, do you know what? Even if I don't hit these times that I'm looking to run again, I'm enjoying this training. I'm getting fit. I'm getting faster than I have been in a good while. And it's a good byproduct of the training. It doesn't always have to be like hate my life, but get this goal.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really important point, not for longevity, for your like overall happiness in the sport. And it just goes to show like your training shouldn't be so brutally hard that you don't want to do it. I mean, Owen, you've been a insanely accomplished athlete and your training was probably fun for 70% of the time. Yes, there's
Yeah.
going to be hard workouts. There's going to be times where you're kind of suffering a little bit.
Oh,
You know,
100%.
I ran cross country and track in college. It was the most fun 4 years I've ever had, despite the hard workouts and long runs and all that, because most of it was very, very manageable. But like you
Yeah.
said, there's that element of volume to it that is just relentless. It should be fun, but yeah, you're kind of just relentlessly working most days. But now I'm
Yeah.
curious, Owen, what does a fun and light 8 by 200 meter workout look like for you? What kind of splits were you hitting on those twos?
I was hitting around 30 seconds. And then last
Oh
one
boy.
like 20. Yeah, it's nice. I haven't done it in a while, so it felt nice. Now, as I said, my chest and I'm a bit like caught up. So I was giving myself longer recovery, which I do think is the way to do those. Like don't like nearly like Jason was saying there, like fast doesn't have to equate to hard, especially if you're not used to doing faster workouts. Like take longer, take 70 seconds recovery versus a minute if it means that you can feel like you're ready to go and hit it a good time without overly forcing it. If they had to be 31s, 32, like the second one was 31. I dialed back in, but I'm not overly forcing it, but I'm just getting into a rhythm. Now I don't want to be straining and saying, oh, I hit all 29s, but now I'm tired. Now I'm like, I got a little strain. Better to like be running fast, but a little bit within myself, like smooth and easy, and then go from there. Okay,
You
last
know,
one. Oh, sorry, go on.
can I just mention something, Owen? I just had a little bit of an epiphany. Everything we've been talking about kind of hits on speed, strength, or endurance. And it's like so basic, isn't it? Like these
Yeah,
are the
yeah,
three physiological North Stars that most athletes, almost doesn't matter your sport, are looking to get just in various doses. And of course, we want a lot more endurance, but we need that speed, we need that strength. And then you can
Yeah.
kind of just think about each bucket of speed, strength, endurance. Be like, well, how do I gain endurance as a runner? Well, you can run a lot. How do I gain strength as a runner? You just go lift some heavy weights. How do you gain speed? Well, you just run short distances really fast. And we almost don't have to overcomplicate it beyond that. I mean, of course, there are books written on training theory and
Yeah.
physiology, and that's a good thing. But for like most of us on a day-to-day basis, if those are our North Stars, we'll be pretty well served.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, as you said, taking a step back and seeing, I love that bucket analogy. It's like, am I hitting these three buckets in my week? And if I'm not, it's like, okay, how do I add it? And like you said, it doesn't have to be rocket science. It's, can I add strides at the end of a run? Can I make sure I do a better warm up for my workouts and do some drills and strides before that? Or can I incorporate it into my workout? As I was saying to you, like adding 4 by 20 seconds hills, like nice 90% hills after an aerobic workout will make a massive difference. Um,
Yeah, and how many marathoners do we know that totally neglect the
yeah,
speed and the strength bucket and really are just running a lot of miles, doing their long run? Maybe they're doing a threshold workout once a week, and there's no speed or strength. And then they wonder why they can't qualify for Boston.
yeah, and I loved your analogy because as I said the floor is good, but you need something pulling yourself up. If you're only running floor paces all the time, well then, um, like all of a sudden marathon pace feels very difficult, like because you've got stuck in that pace or slower. Whereas like, um, the guy who I think Frank Horville was his name, he created or like founded anyway, the British Miners Club here in, well, not here in Ireland, in Britain. Um, and he had like four things that you needed for a marathon. He's like that. It's like you're running, marathon pace has to feel easy. So you need to do some 5K, 10K work in. Just exactly what you're talking about, have some speed. Then he's like, you need to get used to time on feet. That's your volume. Um, you need your thresholds kind of work, uh, like to develop that aerobic base. I'm trying to think what his fourth one is. I'll have to think about it again. Because I say the fourth one then is fueling, but I'll try to think. He had 5K, 10K work, time on feet, and then sorry, practicing aerobic work, and then practicing marathon pace in
Mm.
workouts, in longer workouts, practicing that. And then he's like, if they have those four, but like you're saying, having speed, strength, endurance, and just making sure that regardless of your, it's not like, oh, I'm doing a marathon, I'll just do marathon pace. Regardless, as you said, you've had ultra people on and they've uh they've they've talked about it. We've had one or two ultra runners do our Pilates course. Actually, a good few, good regulars. What's the, in terms of training? What are like the big differences between like ultra training? Do you find, and because you've had a lot of ultra marathons on your runners on your podcast, like what do you? Is it just the volume, or what do you see?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've coached quite a few as well. Ultra training is very similar to marathon training. It's just you have to get that extra specificity of can you finish a 50 mile, 100K, or 100-mile distance?
Yeah,
But you still want to be driving up your economy and your speed because that's just going to make the entire effort more economical and to feel easier. Um, I think the workouts are probably a little bit easier. I might do less 5K, 10K kind of
yeah,
work
of
in an
course.
ultra marathon program, a little bit more threshold marathon pace.
Well,
Again, with a lot of,
that is essentially speed work. For if you're doing
yeah,
100 miles, doing 20 is speed work.
yeah,
Like
especially
it's one
thresholds,
fifth
which
of the
is
distance.
about your 1 hour race pace. So if you're doing
Yeah,
that and you're doing strides or hill sprints, maybe you're doing some of those like 200s, like we've been talking about. If you've ever read Jack Daniel's running formula, he might call this a repetition or an R
yeah,
workout. short, fast, but with pretty good recovery. And then the other thing is like, we've really got to focus on the long run. The long run really becomes the most important training session of the week. And so, you're not going to kind of do the typical, build from 12 miles to 20, then you can finish your marathon. We're going to spend a lot more time in that 15 to 20 mile range and then
Yeah.
occasionally go longer,
Yeah.
occasionally do back to back long run days, and do some of those strategies to really practice time on feet, practice your fueling, just practice being out typically on trails. For most runners, it's usually an off
Yes.
road surface for, distances, or really should say amounts of time that, say, a marathon coach or a track coach would get nervous about. Like, let's go
Yeah.
for a 5 or 6 hour time on feet adventure in the mountains. You would never go for a 5 or 6 hour
No.
training run if you were getting ready for a 10K or a marathon, because it's like, it's just not really giving you what you need. But for, a 100K or a 100 mile ultra, it's giving you exactly what you need. So, yeah, I think it's, to nobody's shock, it's more of an emphasis on the long run,
Yeah.
overall volume, and then less of an emphasis on that, like, kind of mid-range speed, the 5K, 10K, more VO2
Yes.
max stuff.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And then relation to workouts, because I said the volume, strength, strides, really good. And I think sometimes that's just someone to remind you. It's like, yeah, I must add those strides in. As we said last week on yours, take 5 minutes off your run, guys. That one, you'll be breathing heavier. Like your actual aerobic benefit will be bigger with a stride and a very easy jog back than it will with 5 extra minutes. So adding those in. Um, from all the podcasts, then like, and you probably changed your mind a few times, or maybe you're like, yeah, it's as you said, it's a common theme. Any kind of workouts or style of workouts or things that you kind of have really resonated to, or like, oh yeah, I love that kind of guess like outlook on how to do a workout, how to structure a week, say.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think one of the things that I'm most interested in right now, and one of the things that I wish I could go back in a time machine and give myself 15 years ago, is are workouts designed to improve your physiological resilience or your fatigue resistance. So again, and I think a lot of ultra marathoners are kind of doing the pioneering work here because they're just competing in such
Yeah.
extreme events. They're really just trying to figure out how to stop the decline at the end of a race. And this was my problem in the marathon. I usually declined pretty steadily over the last, 5 to 8K. And physiological resilience is basically a way to describe your VO2 max, your lactate threshold, and your running economy. And it's basically how quickly do those three markers of performance decline at the end of a race when you're tired. So, everyone has that, experience in a
Yeah.
marathon. You hit mile 20 or so, and all of a sudden the elephant jumps on your back and you start slowing down. This is a reduction in everything, your running economy. It's a reduction in your VO2 max. The marathon legitimately becomes more expensive from an oxygen perspective later in the race. And so
Yes.
physiological resilience is like, how do we prevent that? Sure, we're going to do VO2 max workouts, we're going to do long runs, we're going to do threshold workouts. Those workouts build up those three markers of performance. But
Yeah.
how do you prevent them from declining so much? And there's a whole bunch of ways you can do it. From more general ways, like you could run high mileage. That's generally protective. If you're training for a marathon, you could do very long marathon specific workouts, 15 miles at marathon pace. Difficult, kind of a grind, but it's going to build that specific skill. One of the things that I think is more interesting, so in terms of a very specific type of workout, is a downhill session where you are incurring a lot of muscle damage. So you're running downhill, let's say a little faster than marathon pace, and you're doing this for like 3, 4, 5, 6 miles at a stretch, 5K to 10K. And there's a lot of eccentric muscle contractions. You're going to be really sore for a couple days, but you adapt to that stress very quickly and you recover fairly quickly from that due to the repeated bout effect. And if you do that, say 3 or 4 times in the 6 weeks leading up to, say, a marathon or an ultra marathon, you're going to build a lot of physiological resilience. And there's something about that hardening of the legs, that enormous stress of incurring all that muscle damage, and then you recover from it, and then you do it again, and then you recover from it. And by the third or fourth time, you know, I can't scientifically describe it, but there is something going on at the cellular level that really protects you from the just repeated stress of running for a very long time. And this is how some runners can get away with a fast ultra or a fast marathon without running high mileage, without running
Yeah.
some of the types of training that one might assume is necessary for these kinds of events. So I think this is very new. I mean, we didn't even really discuss this at all 10 or 15
No.
years ago. I needed this as a marathoner because this, I think, was my, personal weakness when I was competitively training and racing. And I think it's a huge game changer for, any runner who might be experiencing that specific scenario of, I can put together a good season and a good tune-up race, but man, when I hit mile 20 of that marathon, I fall apart every time. It doesn't matter what I do. They might be a
So
really good candidate for this kind of a workout.
yeah, let's go into that then, because that's really interesting. And it makes kind of sense what you're saying, that if they're increasing their eccentric load, they're getting a lot more bang for their buck in that 6 miles. So how would a workout look? So is it like maybe is it you're just trying to jog 20 minutes or whatever, warm up, and then try find somewhere where you've got a natural downhill for 6 miles nearly straight? Or is it like we're doing like 1 mile on a slight downhill, jogging back up a certain amount and then down more? Or how do you work these?
I think there's a lot of flexibility. I think maybe if you had the perfect training venue, um, it would be kind of like the race. So if you're training for a marathon, I would want mostly downhill for that
Yeah.
5 to 10K stretch, rather than those repeated miles where you might go down a mile and then back up and down a
Okay.
mile. But again, if you don't have like a very long downhill stretch, which I understand most people don't have a 8 kilometer downhill stretch where they can just run kind of fast for that period of time, then yeah, you can do something like a circuit where you're running downhill and then there's a little bit of a recovery as you get back up the hill and then repeat it again. I used to do a workout where I found this one little area where it was a long downhill and a long uphill, kind of like this. But then on the other side of the hill, there was a much steeper downhill that you could get back down on one side. And I would just kind of run all around this hill for an entire
Yeah.
run. And I was almost basically running uphill or downhill for the entire run. It wasn't technically a physiological resilience workout. I could have made it that way if I had focused more on running faster on the downhills. But there's a lot of flexibility for how you use your training venue, your training environment to your advantage. And
Yeah.
something like that could work. I mean, I think, you could use a treadmill for this if it has that downhill feature. I know some of them do. And you can really kind of mimic what a more traditional downhill fatigue resistance workout can look like.
So a traditional one will just more be like 20-minute warm up or jog, and then into 6 miles kind of steady at marathon pace, continuous.
Yeah, you could do it that way. You could do it at the end of a long run, which might
Yeah.
be a more challenging way to do it because
Yeah.
you're kind of pre-fatiguing your legs, you're getting yourself tired, and then you're launching yourself down, a huge hill. You could also do it. Okay, here's a totally different type of fatigue resistance workout. You could do your long run. Let's say you're going to run 18 miles.
Yeah.
You run 16 miles, and then you basically do a series of hill repetitions. That's going to be so hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's very similar in that you're recruiting a tremendous amount of muscle fibers. You're going to be incurring a lot more muscle damage doing this kind of workout, having already run for probably 2 hours or more. And this is another type of workout where, basically anything really hard after running
Yeah.
a very long period of time is a type of fatigue resistance workout. And then, of course, broadly speaking, workouts are like the artistic side of running. You can structure them in so many different ways. There's almost no wrong answer unless you're hitting some of these main principles. So
Yeah.
don't be wedded to any single one exact type of workout.
But this fatigue resistance, as you said, like I do these, yeah, long run workouts. So where we're running for 45 minutes, then we're getting into a workout. And your ones might be just a little bit longer than that, maybe an hour, 90 minutes, and then getting into stuff, but go down a hill so you can go slightly faster. With it, on the same heart rates, you'll be going faster, but that's gonna stress the muscular system way more. Yeah, you know what? Like I was with the Australian team years ago now. They needed a physio for altitude training, so I went and I was training with them myself. But they used to go altitude training the whole time, and I was like, oh, it must be great
All right.
for the. Yeah, I was like, it must be great for the like the aerobic benefits, the red blood cell production. And they were adamant. They were like, no, the thing we get most is we are running because obviously you're up mountains. We are running hills, up and down hills. Like our long run would just be like down around a mountain, and then like the last part of it, now that he said it, was like just squirrel all the way to the top of the mountain to back to our house. And they were like, it makes your legs super strong, and that helps it a lot. So that seems to be at that fatigue resistance. And then one other thing then I wanted to ask about that is I didn't even take a breath there. That was good. Uh,
Good
but
VO2 max there,
yeah,
Owen.
one of the other things I wanted to ask about that was how do you structure that into a week? So say if I was doing a long run workout, rather than workout Saturday, long run Sunday, I'll do long run workout will be on Saturday, and then Sunday will be maybe like between 50 and 70 minutes easy, and then Monday will back be an easy run, Tuesday would be an easy run, and then they're back into the workout. So I'm giving them one extra day. Is that the same with these, or do they need longer because they're even more fatigued, or is it just like get them to recover, make sure that they hit that more?
Yeah, that's a good question because these workouts are designed to make you sore like that. You are trying to tempt Uncle Rhabdo for coming from a visit. So that's a fun play on rhabdomyolysis, which is a very unfortunate condition where you exercise so hard that your like muscles start eating each other. We don't want that, but we do want to like maybe wave to Uncle Rhabdo like from the porch. That's the goal of these workouts. But that also means that you might have trouble walking normally the next day. Just like if you were
Yeah,
to race a half marathon or a marathon on the roads, you're going to be really sore the next day. So I almost like to keep the next 2, 3 days a little bit flexible.
yeah,
If you're an injury prone runner, I'm going to be a little more hesitant about these workouts because they are an injury risk. They
yeah,
give you these tremendous benefits, but they are an injury risk. Um, One option is to like, yes, let's push the workout back a day the next week so that you get an extra day of recovery. And maybe that workout becomes a little bit easier. So instead of a threshold workout, maybe you're doing marathon pace. Rather, maybe instead of a 5K, 10K workout, you're doing threshold. So just a little
yeah,
bit easier than what you're currently uh, uh, aiming for in that workout. Um, One of the things that I like to do the next day is maybe we don't run at all the next day, and instead we just do some cross training.
yeah,
We could go for, we could make it a substantial cross training day. I mean, talk about building fatigue resistance. If you did a long run workout with some of this downhill work on Saturday, and then on Sunday, you didn't run at all, but maybe you did 2 hours of stationary cycling
yeah,
and, kind of stayed in that like maybe mid zone two effort. That I think is a wonderful fatigue resistance stimulus because you're basically doing two long runs back to back, except one of them's
yeah,
a bike ride. It's not a long run, and you're getting a lot of aerobic development in a way that is, um, you know, not risky from an injury perspective. So
yeah,
that's kind of how I
100%.
like to do it. the couple days of running in between that big long run and the workout, maybe we just, no set distance or pace. Let's just say 45 to 60 minutes. I'll give the athlete a little bit more flexibility and say no pace requirements here. Like the goal was that workout and then to recover from that workout. It's not to run a certain easy pace 3 days later. I don't
Yeah,
really care. This exactly goes back to what pros don't care about. They care about that big long run, then they just want to recover from it. They don't really care about the next couple days too much.
100%. We can nearly treat it like a mini race, like where we're tapering after. If we felt like a race was tough, you wouldn't go straight after a race and go into
Yeah.
harder training. Great. I'll just ask if Laurie or James have any questions, because then I have one or two just to wrap up. But Jason, I could talk to you all the time. Any questions, guys? Yeah, Laurie?
I just have one. I mean, just to preface it, I'm very recreational as a runner. I've never done marathons. I've done half at most, and usually it's more like 5, 10K. But in the last several years, I've been having like a lot of injuries. Usually it's hamstring tendinopathy recurring about once a year. And then I kind of go back to square one, trying to fix that and then bring up the volume again and so forth. Um, and that's kind of what got me into the whole doing the strength work. And I've been doing that religiously for years. And just recently now it's my knee, which on the totally other side, that's the problem. So I guess my question is, what do you do when you feel like you're following those principles and that you're doing a couple of strengths a week and you're trying to be conservative and ramp things up slowly and you're paying attention to um, both doing some speed and volume, yet you still keep getting hurt. Then what? How do you know what you're doing wrong?
Yeah, that's a good question.
And I'm 60. I should say that too. I'm
Okay.
60, so I'm not a young spring chicken.
Well, you're not an old chicken either, Lori.
Thank you.
60 is the new 50. Yeah, that's a really good question. Look, I do think minor injuries are sort of part of the game if you're an athlete. Especially if you're trying to run races. I mean, you are still a competitive athlete at age 60, which is commendable. It is impressive, but it's going to be one of those things where your things are going to come up from time to time. One thing that I would ask you about if we were working together is like, okay, I'm glad you're doing some strength work. Is it like lifting heavy in the gym for the most part, or are you doing a lot of like PT inspired kind of rehabilitative exercises? Because I found like a lot of runners are good at maybe doing some kind of strength workout once or twice a week, but they're often not doing the sort of running specific isolation exercises that you might do in a physical therapy office that I found to be really helpful at preventing injuries. Because they kind of allow you to recruit certain muscles and patterns of movement that you might not otherwise experience. And I just feel like that has a lot of really beneficial effects. So I would ask about that. Some of the normal things like, are you progressing intensity or mileage too rapidly? Is the density of your training appropriately? So in other words, is it too dense with intensity? You have too many workouts. Are you scheduling the workouts in a way where two workouts in a long run are all Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, and then half the week is really easy, and then that makes me a little nervous because half the week's easy and half the week's really hard, and so I'd like to see a more even distribution. Yeah, this is a tricky one. Owen, what do you think? I don't know if there's a clear cut answer I can give Lori.
Yeah, well, the knee is just a new thing, so that is frustrating. And then I think as Laurie said, we were looking at structuring our weeks slightly differently. Like, so she
Yeah.
does strength training with people in Canada where she's from, um, and it was probably a little bit too intense, too much. So, like, I think there were good insights there, Jason. To be fair, I think. What do you think of those ones, Laurie?
Yeah, I think what you're mentioning, trying to structure things so my break comes a little bit earlier in the week. We're going to try that. And see if that works. Sometimes I wonder,
And
you know,
like you tell him yourself, you're like you went a bit hatchet like when you went back speed
yeah,
training. She
yeah,
has a
I tend
tendency
to
to go
be,
like crazy.
yeah, like on my speed stuff, I'm not good at judging my pace. Um, so whenever I have to do the speedy ones, I just kind of go all out on the intervals and not really paying attention to. Well, partly it's because my watch doesn't record the proper pace at the time I start. Like they're short enough intervals that I don't really see what my pace is until I'm done, and then I'm like, okay, well that was too fast. You know? So I don't know if I was my intensity on the days I was doing speed was too high. I haven't built up to it. Um, I try to keep my easy stuff pretty easy, and my pace is slow enough that I honestly it'd be hard to go much slower without just stopping all the time to keep my pace down. Because sometimes I wonder if that causes more grief because if you try to run really slowly, I
Yeah, yeah. I don't think
feel
you
like you're
have to.
pounding down on your knees too much. You know?
Yeah, and nearly like Jason said, I don't think you have to be overly worrying about going too slow, you know.
Yeah.
Um, no,
So
and I think
That
the
is
ice.
so, and that is something I sometimes worry about with a lot of runners because, like we as coaches often say, like, you got to keep your easy days easy. It's maybe not even super important if your easy pace, your easy runs are at 6 minutes a kilometer or 7 minutes a kilometer. But at the same time, there is an appropriate pace range for every
Yeah,
runner. And that means that you can run too fast. It also means that you can run too slow.
yeah,
And so
100%.
Lori, I have no idea what your ability level is, but let's just say you go for a run and you're trying to run like 13-minute miles, and that's probably too slow for you. And you're going to feel clunky, uncoordinated.
Uh,
You're going to feel like you're unnecessarily restricting your movement patterns.
mm.
That sometimes can give you injuries. I will never forget. I was once a cross country counselor at a cross country camp, and when I was in college, and I was tasked with running with the seventh grade girls, and we were running 3 minutes slower than my normal easy pace, and that made me sore. I was legitimately sore from running slow, and I was a decent collegiate cross country and track runner. So there is, definitely something to be said about just running really slow all the time. Um, Make sure it's an appropriate slow.
Yeah, I think I do. I just question sometimes, like if I do what feels sort of natural and good, and I can still talk a bit and blah blah blah, I feel I'm okay. Occasionally I'll do walk breaks, like just a minute within, if that will bring the overall pace down to what I'm supposed to be doing. But I won't try to actually run at that slower pace because I find it too clunky. Um, so
yeah,
yeah,
that's such that. Look, I think some of the isolated exercises as well. I have one other one for the knee. That's kind of new thing
yeah,
to try get. And then I think with the proximal hamstring, it can be it's excuse
yeah.
the
I
pun,
mean,
a
it's
pain in the butt. But
yeah,
I think
it's been
it's as you
behaving
said,
itself. Now it's just the knee.
that's good. A new pain is always easier to fix than old pain, and
Yeah,
then it's just not. I thought if people can listen back to Jason's advice to Laurie there, it's so good because it's getting a balance between the strength training, some isolated exercises to do to make sure that you're firing up the right areas. Then it's also sometimes people can overly focus on, and not you, Laurie, you've done everything right, and then we can just get unlucky with a few things. But I think what Jason said there of like on the strength rehab side, what can you do? And then on the structure of your running side is a massive thing as well, like deload weeks, not progressing too fast, structuring like the intensity at different times, looking at how we do it. Like I said, I know you have your own coach, Laurie, and but sometimes I think sometimes it can be when we're going back to speed training, it's like so fast, and then from a speed session into a hard gym session, like there's just a lot of like muscular fatigue there that can be,
yeah,
that the tendons then can struggle with or whatever. So it's just looking at what you're doing, seeing what you can handle, and then kind of going from there.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I recently hurt my knee. No, it wasn't recent. It was 2 years ago. I hurt my knee because in one day I went for a decently long run. I did a strength workout in the gym, and then I played basketball. And
Yeah.
as a master's athlete, that was probably not the best idea for me. So sometimes it's just there's no good reason except maybe one day you just experienced a high load from not just training, but life, day-to-day stuff.
Yeah.
Lori, I'm going to put a link in the chat just to a routine that I built 15 years ago, but it still works really well. It is a hip and glute oriented strength workout. I'm not saying you have to do this, but just kind of take a look at it and see, like, are you doing similar kind of work in your current rehab for this knee issue? Because a lot of knee issues are caused further up the chain by like a hip issue. And so if you can kind of, and this is some of that isolation work that we were talking about with using a band.
Brilliant.
Oh, great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
She's looking for that today. Great. Jason, I could literally talk to you all day and I don't think I'd get bored, but we just had an hour and again, it's absolutely flown. Thank you so much. I've been on your podcast once and then last week was my second time. I really appreciate you coming back onto this, and anybody wants to obviously listen to the podcast, it's Strength Running Podcast.
Did Owen just leave? Or did
no, I'm here. Can you see me? See you gone?
Can you see me?
I can see you fine. God, I was just literally giving you an outro there of saying, where can anyone hear from you? Strength Running Podcast, Jason, best place?
Yeah, I mean, strengthrunning.com is where you can learn all about me and strength running. If you're into podcasts, the Strength Running Podcast is where you'll find world-class experts like Owen and many other great folks talking about training theory and physiology. If you like video, the Strength Running YouTube channel is also an option too.
Yeah, and I know I've said it before, like, it's just such worth listening, because you can see from Jason here, he's so knowledgeable, but then he lets his guests talk. But because he knows the knowledge, he knows exactly the right questions to ask, and he just brings so much more out of people. So Jason, thank you again, and thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, and I'll just say I've been a regular listener of Jason's podcast, and it's excellent. I'd recommend it to anyone.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
Okay, well done, guys. Thank you.
Okay, take care, guys.
Bye.